They gave over half of their life to the worlds they came to Thailand to escape. One from a legal world, the other from the world of a Korean Mafia family. Both came to get away from their past. Instead, their past came for them. Our past rarely goes softly into the night. It fights tooth and nail to become a part of our present and future, if you let it. He knew how the past moved. She knew how the past thought. Would their love be enough to help them survive the fight for their life? She had spent decades reading people for a living, not guessing, assessing, measuring congruence between affect and speech, tracking micro expressions, evaluating credibility, impulse control, psychopathy. And that was the problem. Her mind no longer stopped when it was supposed to. A scooter backfired behind them. The sound cracked through her nervous system like a gunshot. Her vision tunneled. Suddenly, she wasn't on the beach road anymore. She was back in the evaluation room, windowless, beige, too quiet. The man across from her smiled too easily. White, mid-30s, hands folded like a polite student. "Do you ever feel remorse?" she had asked. "I feel misunderstood," he'd replied. Then, a blur of motion, a chair scraping, his weight slamming into her, the smell of sweat and rage, and something feral. His hands around her throat. Her body reacted now the same way it had then, heart spiking, breath locking, muscles freezing instead of fighting. Tonic immobility. She hated that she knew the term. She stumbled. Kung stopped instantly. "Lin?" Her name, low, steady, cut through the fog just enough. She bent forward, hands on her knees, sucking air as if she'd been underwater too long. Her braids fell forward, hiding her face. It was 7 years later, and the memory still caused tears to sting her eyes. She lost everything. Never again. Not in court, not on the ward, not anywhere. Lin grumbled with conviction. She meant that thing. Kung didn't lose his throne in a war. He gave it up at a graveside. When his daughter was taken, the rivals didn't ask for money. They didn't ask for mercy. They asked for territory. And when Kung refused, they killed her anyway. That was the moment he understood the truth. His crown wasn't protecting his family, it was killing them, so he did the unthinkable. He placed the syndicate in his son's hands, a boy raised to rule, and walked away from the empire he built. Not because he was done fighting, but because he was done letting the people he loved die for his name. Thailand wasn't an escape. It was a king's voluntary exile. Their story. "I can't do this anymore. Something has to change before I lose what's left of my mind," Lin muttered. It wasn't her home that she had to change. Her home was beautiful, but it was also a mental cocoon that she used to shield her from people. In the 7 years since the incident, she had cried, gotten mad, sat staring at nothing, and slowly, she had built walls as solid as cinder blocks around her life. She was okay with being alone, but that alone kept her from seeing the sun without windows in between. She used to travel, windows down, music up. She used to take herself to dinner. She used to put her feet up at the movie theater. She used to live unconditionally. She had spent decades reading minds, assessing criminals, predicting behavior. And yet, one man, one attack, had shattered everything and left her with nothing. She wanted to go far away. "I only need water, trees, music, food, and affordability, and a fine man every now and then. Is that too much to ask for? I mean, can't a sister get a little love?" Thailand, that was the plan. No contacts, no language, no obligations, no violence. Just sun, sand, and the quiet hope that she could put herself back together again. Her family asked if she was scared of going to a country on the side of the world where she knew no one. One thing she'd never been was scared. She grew up in Southern California. You couldn't be scared and survive the streets of LA. Never Scared was her theme song. She decided to Google it. Never Scared came out in 2003. How old was I then? Like 33. Lord, I am getting old. She laughed to herself because she was already 55. Getting has already got. She kept her word to herself, and in spite of her only brother's protest and her youngest child's distress. Child? Her youngest was 24 and a mother herself. She moved to Thailand and found a condo in Pattaya near the beach. Every morning, she walked along the beach road. She was 5'10", caramel skin, long braids, a shapely thing. She drew attention without seeking it. People smiled, asked for pictures, even asked her to dance in the street. She laughed and kept walking. African American women in Pattaya were a rarity. The beach road was a rhythmic chaos of motorbikes and tourists. Lynn walked it every morning before the heat became oppressive. She moved with a natural grace, regale, despite her simple attire. Head held high, her internal light was as bright as the sun. No one could imagine the pain that lingered inside. Her therapist said to her, "You wear the mask well." She didn't know whether to take that as a compliment or a clinical diagnosis. Across the street, sitting under the shaded awning of a small cafe, Kung watched her through hooded eyes. He was 58, with skin the color of warm sand and features that looked as though they'd been carved from teakwood. High cheekbones, hair thick and black pulled back with just a sprinkle of gray. The watch on his wrist probably cost more than the restaurant he was sitting in. He sipped his tea, his long legs and broad shoulders accompanied his 6'3" frame, and filled the small wooden chair to the max. There she is again, Kung murmured to himself. He had seen it all in his life as a mafia boss. The greed, the fear, the fake bravado. But this woman was different. She was alone, yet she didn't look lonely. Her beauty and joy were foreign to Kung. In his world, every smile held demand or deceit behind the teeth. She looked like a queen in voluntary exile. A street performer began playing a jaunty tune on a bamboo flute. He waved at Lynn, gesturing for her to join him. Lynn paused, a genuine smile breaking across her face. "Sure, why not?" she said, spinning lightly in the sand, her braids whipping behind her. She was always kind and stood for pictures. She smiled and waved back when people greeted her. She wasn't aware of the eyes that watched her every morning. Kung didn't take his eyes off her. "She's fearless," he whispered, "and she doesn't even know I exist. Yet." It was beautiful like any other morning in Thailand. Lynn decided to stop and get a cup of tea. While in line, a European man approached with his friends. The man was rude, yelling to Lynn that she needed to hurry up and get out of the way, that she was holding up the line. She was just waiting for her order like other people, but she was the only African American woman there. As she willingly moved to sit down, the man, acting like the bully he was, grabbed the seat and told her that she needed to find somewhere else to go. Lynn didn't raise her voice. Instead of the bold and confident woman she used to be, she had stepped back. Her response to the aggression was out of character for the woman Kung had thought her to be. Lynn froze. Panic flared in her chest. "Not today. Not here." "Step back," Kung said to the man. Calm, quiet, lethal. Kung had intervened, stepping between her and the aggressive man. He whispered something in the man's ear that made the color drain from his face. In spite of their order waiting for them, the man turned and rushed his friends away. Kung turned to find Lynn standing in one place, shaking and holding tight to her cup of tea, so tight that her knuckles were turning white, tears brimming her eyes. He knew that look of terror on her face. He had caused that look on others many times. She looked at him, and she started to take steps backward, not aware that she was approaching a short ledge. Kung tried to tell her and reach for her before she fell. Just as he was within reach, her foot bumped the wall and she began to fall. She flung the tea and reached her hands out, not to grab his hand. She was willing to fall instead of making contact with this large, imposing figure. But he was not okay with that. He reached and caught around her back with one arm. As he held her, she froze. She held that spot long enough to look up into his eyes. She searched his eyes and didn't see a threat. She knew that because that's what she did. She read people. He wasn't a physical threat, but she giggled to herself. This man had beautiful eyes. "Oh no, sir. We are not having a K-drama. He catches me and we stare into each other's eyes. Experience." Her moment of distress was quickly replaced by her goofy sense of humor. She stood, looked him up and down, and said, "Thank you, sir, for everything." She turned and walked rather quickly in the direction she had come from. He watched her go, but followed her at a distance. About a block up the walkway, he saw her stumble and lean into a tree. She was gasping for air, like she had been holding her breath the entire time. As he followed her, he asked himself out loud, "What in the hell are you doing?" Why are you following her? He told himself it was just to make sure she got home safely. He followed her all the way to her condo. She knew he was following her. She missed very little. She was hyper vigilant, not out of fear, but it was residue from years of working in high risk situations. She knew that he wasn't a threat, and he was fine as heck. She should say, he's a very handsome man, instead, but she felt fine as heck was more accurate. East Asian of some type, probably Korean. But seeing one this fine in person was like seeing a unicorn in the wild. Golden tanned skin and broad shoulders that were strong enough to catch her without them both falling over. Yes, sir, that man is fine, Lynn said to herself. At the door of her condo, she turned back and looked him in the eye and mouthed, "Thank you again." He was surprised because he didn't realize that she knew he was following her. The next morning, it was business as usual, but this time she walked on the other side of the street from the incident. She wasn't scared. I ain't never scared, playing in her head, but her mama didn't raise a fool either. She had spent half of last night mad at herself for not giving that white man a piece of her mind. As she walked, humming some Jill Scott from her earbuds, she saw the fine man. He sat at a table sipping a cup of something, watching as she approached. She wasn't really surprised to see him, but she had no intention of stopping. She nodded her head in recognition but continued on her walk. She noticed as he stepped behind her. "I'm glad you didn't let that incident keep you from coming back outside," Kung said, knowing that in spite of her earbuds she heard him even though he didn't raise his voice. "I almost decided not to, but I ain't never scared." She giggled and kept on her route. He didn't say anything to her, just walked next to her like a private bodyguard. She didn't try to walk away from him, her stride stayed the same. They continued like that all the way back to her condo. As they got to the door, she turned to say, "Thank you and goodbye." For the next several days, this routine continued. After nearly a week of this, Lynn finally turned with a smile. "How long are you going to walk with me without talking to me?" She granted him that beautiful smile he had seen her offer to Thai people along her walk. It was like warm sunshine, bathed his face, and it made his heart skip a beat, which shocked the hell out of him because in all of his 58 years of life, his heart had never skipped a beat at an interaction with a woman. She noticed the shock on his face and giggled. Giggled? When in the hell did I start giggling at a man? A man that she didn't know, no less, she reprimanded herself. He smiled at her. His dimple popped out like peekaboo. That was the first time she had seen him smile, and it caused a warm flush over her body. "Girl, you might be in trouble," she warned herself. "Don't smile at me like that, man. You are confusing me," she said with a slight blush, but also jokingly she gave him a shy smile. The coy look on her face made him throw back his head and laugh out loud. Beautiful and funny. It doesn't get any better. Another shock to her system was the deep warmth of his voice tinged with the hint of Asian accent. His accent was unmistakable, but his English was nearly perfect. "Lord have mercy." She was walking with Jill the last time and must have missed that. "Why are you following me every day? You follow me and I let you, but I don't know you like that. I don't even know your name. Someone watching might think we are a couple." "I'm game if you're game." He smiled at her again. "Game? Game for what?" She raised one eyebrow as she looked at him. "To become a couple?" "I'm in if you are. I ain't never scared." He continued to smile at her. It was her turn to laugh. "I do not remember saying that to you. What do you know about Bone Crusher?" "Absolutely. Nothing." His smile almost swayed her, but her fears peeked its head out. So many thoughts ran through her mind, and her walls started to go back up. He could tell the shift in her mood, but didn't understand what he said that caused her to change so suddenly. Even with the change, he dared to continue on and gave her his name. "Let me introduce myself so that we're no longer strangers. My name is Kung Da Sung, a retired old man." He didn't tell her what he retired from and hoped that he never had to go in depth about his past. He never would have thought that his past would come to pull him and Lynn back to the world of the Korean Mafia. Lynn returned the favor, shaking his outreached hand. "Hello, my name is Lynette Coleman. You can call me Lynn." She didn't share the part of her life that included being a doctorate of psychology with a focus on criminal law. Her fear of becoming too close to someone, not sure of how this would affect her joy, hit her like a gut punch. But looking at him and the way he made her feel safe and secure, she felt a hole growing in her wall. It was starting to look more like Swiss cheese. Lynn told herself she was fine. Every morning she turned on her playlist. Without music, she really would lose her mind. She started off her morning with D'Angelo's remake of the Ohio Players, Heaven Must Be Like This. A place where I can find happiness, a place close to your loveliness, somewhere to rest my aching mind, where there's no time. Your love is divine. Then, Music Soul Child, You'll Be All Right, Mary J., My Life, Jill, India, Erica, and definitely Lauren. Music was the backdrop for her life. Music and laughter. A day without either meant she was on her last leg and somebody needed to bring a wreath. Just like every other day, she walked the beach road again, the heat already pressing against her skin. Kung Da sung beside her in a quiet step. He never crowded her, never reached for her, never tried to steer her body with his presence the way men sometimes did without realizing it. That mattered. She noticed everything, the cadence of his breathing, the way his gaze moved, not scanning women, not restless, but outward, measuring distances. He walked like a man who had learned that danger rarely announced itself, which should have unsettled her more than it did. You're doing it again, she warned herself. Profiling. You don't want to be a part of that world, but that world is still a part of you, Lynn told herself with a sigh of resignation. The assault took her sanity for more than a moment. It wasn't just assault, it was the lack of support around her as she tried to rebuild. It was like a house of cards. She just couldn't hold it together. She thought that coming to Thailand was a new foundation. As they walked quietly down Hyomedian Road that ran next to the beach, a man running towards them. He was too close. He was coming too fast. Her vision tunneled. All she could see was a white man running at her. Suddenly, she wasn't on the beach road anymore. She was back in the evaluation room, windowless, beige, too quiet. The man across from her smiled too easily. White, mid-30s, hands folded like a polite student. Do you ever feel remorse? She had asked. I feel misunderstood, he'd replied. Then, a blur of motion, a chair scraping, his weight slamming into her, the smell of sweat and rage and something feral, his hands around her throat. Her body reacted now the same way it had then, heart spiking, breath locking, muscles freezing instead of fighting, tonic immobility. She hated that she knew the term. She was having a panic attack. She couldn't breathe. She felt like she was being choked. She couldn't break free. Somebody, please help me. I'm dying. She stumbled. Kung stopped instantly. Lynn? Her name, low, steady, cut through the fog just enough. He was there with her. He was there. She wasn't alone. She bent forward, hands on her knees, sucking air as if she'd been underwater too long. Her braids fell forward, hiding her face. It was 7 years later, and the memory still caused terror and tears to sting her eyes. She lost everything. I'm okay, she said automatically. Lie. He didn't touch her. He waited. When she straightened, her smile was tight, brittle around the edges. I just need a second. They resumed walking, slower now. You don't have to explain, he said. That nearly broke her. She didn't tell him she used to be a forensic psychologist. Didn't tell him she had once been trusted to decide whether a human being understood the difference between right and wrong well enough to stand trial. Didn't tell him that after the attack, something fundamental had fractured. She could still analyze, still diagnose, still see pathology with terrifying clarity. But she could no longer be impartial. Every aggressive male defendant became him. Every charm-laced denial felt like a threat. Her reports grew cautious, overcorrected, prosecutors complained, defense attorneys circled, and the worst part? She knew it. That's when the tears started. Every single day, she watched her career slip away. She cried. For 4 whole months, she cried. And that year, 6 loved ones died. It was all too much. She was triggered by everything that even looked like it might bring harm. She knew her objectivity was compromised, and that knowledge made her unfit. The court didn't remove her. She removed herself. Thailand was exile by choice. That afternoon, Kung sat alone on his balcony watching the street below. He had learned long ago that peace was never silence. It was the absence of movement that didn't belong. And today, something didn't belong. A man across the street pretended to scroll his phone too intently. Another lingered near a tuk-tuk longer than necessary. Kung felt it then, the old familiar prickle between his shoulders. I'm being watched? His phone vibrated. Son, he answered without greeting. You said you were laying low, his son's voice said in Korean. Tight, controlled. Why do I hear about eyes on you? Kung's jaw tightened. I didn't ask for eyes. You never have to, his son replied. Your past does that for you. Kung looked toward Lin's building down the block. A line he had sworn never to cross was already blurring. There's someone here, Kung said. She's not part of this. Silence. Then no one is ever not part of it, father? Not once they're seen. Kung ended the call. That night, Lin woke up choking on air. Her heart slammed so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Her hands clawed at the sheets as if they were restraining her. The dream clung to her even as she sat upright. A man's shadow, a locked door, the smell of fear. She pressed her palm to her chest, grounding herself the way her own therapist had taught her. Name 5 things you can see. The moonlight through the curtains, the outline of the door. Her suitcase, still not fully unpacked, sitting in the corner. Her reflection in the dark window, older, tired, still standing. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed, went to the balcony, down below, across the street. A man stood smoking, eyes lifted toward her building. Not hiding. Waiting. Her stomach dropped. Maybe she had subconsciously noticed it already. That would explain the recent increase in panic attacks. And for the first time since she had met Kung Da-sung, Lin wondered, what if the danger didn't stay on the beach road? Lin decided 2 things very early in life. 1, if she was going to survive pain, she would survive it loudly. 2, no one, not fear, not memory, not violence, was going to steal her joy without a fight. So when she nearly had a panic attack over burnt toast that morning, she laughed at herself. Girl, she muttered to the toaster, hand pressed to her chest. You have survived courtrooms, criminals, and grad school. You will not be defeated by carbohydrates. The toast did not argue. By the time she stepped outside, she had her armor on. Sunglasses, a loose sundress, and humor sharpened to a blade. Kung was always waiting when she emerged, and she noticed him the way one notices the tide. Inevitable, steady, oddly comforting. You know, she said as she fell into step beside him, at this point, you're less mysterious stranger and more unpaid bodyguard. He glanced at her. Unpaid? Seeing her smile directed at him made his heart flutter and a flush rise up his neck until the tips of his ears were red. He had built an empire on fear. Entire rooms used to go quiet when he entered. Men who had killed without blinking avoided his gaze, but her smile undid him. Did you sleep? He asked. She shrugged. Eventually, my brain likes to throw surprise parties at 3 a.m. Are they fun? Oh, absolutely not, she said dryly. 0 stars, would not recommend. That earned him a low chuckle. He loved the way she spoke, plain, warm, unafraid to joke about the things that hurt. He had known women who hid pain behind silence, others who weaponized it. Lin carried hers like a scar she refused to let define her, and that made him want, no, need, to protect her laughter. They walked past a fruit vendor. Lin stopped abruptly, pointing. Oh no, mangoes. That's bad? He asked. Very, she said solemnly. I have no self-control. If I buy one, I'll buy 5. Then I'll eat all 5. Then I'll complain about my choices. He watched her debate herself like it was a sport. She sighed. Fine. 1 mango for growth. He paid before she could protest. She blinked at him. Sir, I did not agree to be sponsored. Consider it an investment, he said. In what? Your smile. She laughed. full-bodied, surprised, real. That warmth in his chest, spreading outward, loosening something he hadn't known was locked tight. This, he thought, this is what people protect. Later that afternoon, Kung stood in his condo, shirt unbuttoned, scars faintly visible along his ribs as he dried off. He felt guilty. He knew he needed to tell Lin the truth about who he was. He didn't want it to blindside her. He didn't want her finding out any other way than through him. And the fact that his past is creeping up on them, he thought now, is mandatory. He felt it again. That sense of eyes where there should be none. He crossed to the window and scanned the street. Same man as last night, just in a different position. They're getting closer. His phone rang. His son. "You're not listening," his son said immediately. "They're testing your perimeter." "I don't have a perimeter," Kung replied. "That's the problem." Kung exhaled slowly. "She's not part of this." "She's already being seen," his son snapped. "You walk with her every day." Kung's jaw tightened. "Then you make sure she's untouched." Silence. Then quieter. "That's not how this world works, father." Kung ended the call and stood very still. Fear settled in his gut. Not for himself, for someone who laughed at mangoes. He would not lose her too. That evening, Lin nearly collided with him outside her building. "Whoa," she said, stepping back. "How do you just appear now? Is that a skill?" "You're distracted," he said with hidden concern. She held up her phone. "I was watching a highlight reel, Dodgers baseball." His eyebrow lifted. "Do you like sports?" She scoffed. "Please, I contain multitudes." That made him smile as they walked together toward the entrance. She was talking, animated, joking about referees. When she stopped, her humor vanished like a switch flipped. Kung felt it instantly. "What is it?" he asked. She stared at her door. There, tucked neatly beneath the handle, was a folded piece of paper. Her breath shortened and her hand trembled. Kung stepped closer without touching her. "I'm here," he said quietly. She swallowed, then snorted softly. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "My brain is screaming danger, but another part of me is annoyed because I just vacuumed." He almost laughed. Almost. Lynn stared at the folded paper like it had personally offended her. "Okay," she thought. "We are not doing this." Her heart was already sprinting ahead of her logic, adrenaline flooding her veins like it was late for something important. She hated that part, the way her body betrayed her before her mind could weigh in. "Breathe," she told herself. "You've assessed crime scenes. You've testified in murder trials. This is paper. Stationary. Calm down." Still, paper had never been left at her door before. Kung didn't touch her. He stood close enough that she could feel the heat of him, solid and grounding, but he gave her space. She noticed that, filed it away. He was very good at reading people without crowding them. That should have scared her, but it didn't. "Do you want me to open it?" he asked. Her instinct screamed yes, but pride said absolutely not. She reached for the note and her fingers shook just enough to annoy her. Great, she thought. 55 years old and I'm beefing with a piece of paper. She unfolded it. Blank. She frowned and turned it over. Nothing. "That's it?" she said out loud. Kung leaned closer, scanning it. "No message? No threat, no creepy symbol, not even bad handwriting." She huffed a laugh. "Honestly, rude. If you're going to leave ominous paper at my door, at least commit." The laugh came easier than she expected, but inside her mind was already racing. Someone wanted to be noticed, or wanted to see who would open the door, or wanted to see if she wasn't alone. "You're not afraid," Kung observed. She snorted. "Oh, I'm terrified. I just refuse to let fear think it's in charge." That earned her one of his looks, the ones that lingered a second too long. "That's impressive," he said quietly. She shrugged. "I was raised in Los Angeles. Fear and I grew up on the same block." He smiled. You don't talk like someone who runs from things. I don't, she said. Then softer, I just learned when to leave. Can I come in? We need to talk. The serious look on his face made her stomach start hurting immediately. Everyone knows we need to talk means bad news. Later that night, Lynn lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan. He had started their conversation with a comment that let her know this was going to be deeper than she expected. Lynette, we probably should have had the conversation already. As perceptive as you are, I figure you know that there is something I'm not telling you about me. He maintained eye contact, not apologetic nor confrontational. It was a, this is just the facts of the matter kind of look. It's one thing knowing that someone has secrets, another knowing exactly what those secrets are, Kung said with a serious look in his eyes. And then Kung told her everything, more than she really cared to know. She felt it was ironic that he was on the illegal side of the line and she was on the legal side. Far end of the spectrum. At least he wasn't a psychopath who killed for pleasure. Lynn said, making an internal joke. Ultimately, that wasn't her world anymore, just like he said that his past wasn't his place anymore. They had that in common. The past wasn't their world anymore, but that doesn't mean a piece of that world doesn't live inside them. She knew he had expected her to get upset, even a little. Instead, her response was very calm, which was actually more disconcerting for him. Slowly, Lynn walked close to him, raised her hands to gently take his jawline, and pulled his head down to hers and kissed him deeply. Her kiss was an answer to his fear that she wouldn't understand him and his world. He feared that she would pull away. Instead, she clung to him. Her hands ran up the back of his neck to caress the thick hair there. She unbuttoned his shirt and kissed his collarbone. Kung looked down into Lynn's eyes. Gone was the playful look that usually resided in her eyes, replaced with a deep, dark gaze of desire. The look in her eyes made his heart skip a beat. He had never felt this type of intensity, and it almost frightened him. She placed her hands under his shirt and ran her warm hands up his back. Her hands were so warm, but it sent shivers down his spine. He had never felt so weak at a woman's touch. During this entire time, she had continued to kiss his neck. Kung leaned his head back with the onslaught of her passion. She had brought her passion for life and turned it into the passion for making love to him. Kung had mercy on them both and lifted her in his arms, wrapping her legs around his waist. He carried her to the bed in the middle of the room where sheer fabric hung as a protection. But tonight, it would bear witness to the way they worshipped each other's bodies. The next morning, she woke up still tangled in sheets and Kung's arms. So many things ran through her mind. All of it was about Kung. She was surprised that she had slept so soundly, but the information from last night returned and her mind went into analytical overdrive. She considered the connection between the blank note and Kung's criminal background. The conflict between Kung's past and her past was a no-brainer. The question really is, how is she going to deal with it? She understood that she was already on the radar of his enemy, or his allies, hence the blank note on her door. She wasn't so ignorant that she didn't realize she was safer with him than without him. One thing was for certain, she wasn't mad at Kung. She knew that he would never intentionally involve her in this. She believed that he had chosen to get out and live the rest of his life away from that world. Our past rarely goes softly into the night. Our past fights tooth and nail to become a part of our present and future if we let it. Her brain had switched into analysis mode, the part of her that never really shut off anymore. It used to be her greatest strength. Now it was a double-edged sword. What kind of person leaves a blank note? What behavior does that indicate? Power, curiosity, surveillance? Kung's arm that had been draped over her waist came up to hold her tight. He whispered in her ear, "Stop. I can feel you tightening up as a million things go through your mind. You're getting stiffer." "Stop," she told herself. "You don't need to solve this immediately." She knew that she had that bad. Everything needed to be done right now, not later. "I realize that. I have it bad. Whenever I moved, everything was unpacked. Pictures on the wall, clothes hanging in the closet, dishes in the cabinet within 24 hours of closing the back of the moving truck." She had the same approach to her work for the court, and her mind, unhelpfully, supplied another memory. A courtroom. The weight of eyes on her. A defense attorney's voice, sharp with accusation. Dr. Coleman, isn't it true that trauma can bias perception? Yes. Yes, it could. That was the problem. She rolled onto her side and laughed softly into her pillow. Girl, she whispered to herself, you came to Thailand to escape crime, and crime said, peekaboo. She missed LA suddenly. The chaos made sense there. The Dodgers playing under stadium lights, the city buzzing no matter the hour. She'd grown up tough, competitive. College volleyball and street basketball had taught her how to take hits and get back up. This? This was different. This was quiet, and quiet let thoughts get loud. She thought of the old adage, an idled mind is the devil's playground. After kissing Lin with a promise to call her in a couple of hours, Kung left but carried thoughts of concern. He didn't like this, not the note, the timing, nor the way his instincts were humming like a live wire. He'd seen this pattern before, testing boundaries, signaling presence, letting the prey know it had been noticed. Except Lin was not prey. She was unprotected, and that was worse. His phone vibrated with a message from his son. They know she matters. Kung's stomach clenched. He typed back, then they better not touch her. She is under my protection. Then, you're asking for a war. Kung looked up at Lin's balcony, the light still on. For the first time in years, the threat of violence didn't feel familiar. It felt personal. The next morning, Lin stepped outside armed with coffee, sunglasses, and stubborn optimism. She spotted Kung immediately. You know, she said as she joined him, if this is the part where you tell me I need to be careful, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear it. He smiled. Her joking around was a good thing, right? I wasn't going to say that. She eyed him. Liar. I was going to say, I like the Dodgers too. She stopped dead in her tracks. You do not. Name a player. Mookie Betts, he replied smoothly. Her mouth fell open. Okay, that's unsettling. Or have you been studying? He laughed. That laugh, deep, genuine, sent a strange warmth through her chest. This, she realized suddenly, is why this is dangerous. Not the note or being watched. This moment, where her protective walls have lowered enough for her to truly connect and made vulnerable. And vulnerability had almost killed her. But as she walked beside him, sunlight glinting off the sea, she made a quiet promise to herself. I will not spend the rest of my life shrinking, even if it scared her, especially if it did. Thank you so much for staying with us this long. We hope you are enjoying the story of Lin and Kung. Please like and subscribe. Now on with the story. Look at you, she said to her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Thriving, international woman of mystery, possibly being stalked by the Korean Mafia, but well rested. When she woke up in the morning and realized she had slept a full 6 hours without waking up screaming, she took the win. She brushed her teeth and practiced her calm face that felt like lying. Her body hadn't gotten the memo that she was safe. Not that she was right now. Safety to her nervous system was theoretical, like unicorns or unbiased juries. She stretched, rolling her shoulders the way she used to before volleyball matches. Muscle memory kicked in immediately. For a second, she was 20 again. Sweaty gym, polished floor, adrenaline buzzing through her veins. Back then, her anger and frustration had direction. Hitting the ball against the wall, solo practice on her serve, bump, and spike had served as an outlet for frustration, anger, and it taught her to control the direction of her life. But now fear just hovered. She hated that more than anything because she had never been a fearful person. Fearing meant that she was under someone else's control. Kung noticed immediately that something was off. Not fear. He knew what fear looked like. No, this was sharper, more alert. You're thinking very loudly today, he said as they walked. She smirked. You can hear that? No, he replied. But I can feel it. She exhaled slowly. Let me say this, I am not spooked about your past. I am not about to run away. Matter of fact, move over, you're in my spot. He looked at her confused as hell. Not you, your shadow. Like your shadow is how I'm about to be. You know my analytical mind. I realize next to you is better than being across the street. Plus, I'm not just a planner, I'm a plotter. Once again, she caused him so much joy, even in the midst of his fear for her. Okay, on a serious note, let's discuss the note. A serious look came over his face, not a brimstone and fire look, but a let's get down to business look. The blank note, that's worse, he said flatly. She raised an eyebrow. You're going to have to explain that one, sir. Messages without words are meant to unsettle, he said. They're tests. She sighed. Fantastic. I came to Thailand for pad thai and peace, not psychological warfare. He watched her carefully. Are you frightened? She considered the question honestly. Yes, her body said. No, her soul answered. I'm aware, she settled on, which is different. He nodded once, accepting that. You don't ask many questions, she observed. I ask the ones that matter. She laughed. That's either very wise or very suspicious. Both, he said. That made her laugh harder. God, he loved that sound. It did something to him, loosened the tight coil in his chest that had been wound for decades. When she laughed, he forgot who he was supposed to be, forgot the blood and the power and the vigilance. He just felt human. And that terrified him more than any enemy ever had. That afternoon, Lynn sat on her balcony pretending to read while, very obviously, people watching. Okay, she thought, if I were surveilling me, what would I look like? Her brain slipped effortlessly into assessment mode. The old professional reflex. Male, likely foreign. Loitering behavior inconsistent with tourism. Repeated visual contact. No phone usage or too much phone usage. She froze, then ordered herself to stop. This was the line she didn't want to cross. She used to write reports that influenced people's futures. Prison, hospitals, freedom. She needed neutrality for that, distance, clarity. But now her trauma colored everything. Every unknown man became a threat. Every ambiguous behavior became sinister. That's why she quit. That was why she won't go back. She hated herself for it on bad days and forgave herself on good ones. Today was what mixed. She couldn't stop the intrusive thoughts. That was the clinical term for memories or thoughts that could not be avoided. They come, and you find a way to deal with it and move on. She remembered the attack vividly. It happened on a Thursday, November 8th, 2018, 4:00 p.m. She'd left the ER at 3 a.m. with her arm in a splint. Her VP called, not to ask how she was feeling or if she wanted to take a few days off. She wanted to know what time Lynn was coming in. They wanted her back at work the very same day. She remembered the words of her VP, I guess you have to learn how to write with your left hand. Lynn started crying the next day. She cried every single day for 4 months straight. Honestly, she had considered giving up altogether. They, took her joy. Her joy was her life. She wanted to lay down her life. She was hanging on by a thin thread and she wanted to let go. She was tired. What did she have left to give? Tears filled her eyes again just thinking about it. That's what she did for 4 months straight. She called it leaking. She would be watching something on TV and realize that she had tears running down her face. Her body was in a perpetual mourning state. She mourned herself. She couldn't hold a simple conversation without spiraling. She was only 50, and people always wanted to know what she did for a living. Why did she leave her job? Is she thinking of going back? Inevitably, she would start leaking, sometimes hard. It was embarrassing, which only made her leak more. So her solution was to avoid people. She would just rather not people with the people. She had to accept it. It just was what it was. Today was a day where she got mad. This man in the shadows was getting on her nerves. She stood abruptly and paced. Okay, she muttered. We are not spiraling, we are redirecting. Find something else to fill its place. She grabbed her phone and queued up a Dodgers highlight reel from 2025, Mookie Betts stealing home, the crowd roaring. Ohtani hitting another home run. Her daily dose of Dodgers. Her breathing slowed. That's it, she thought. Anchor to joy. A knock came at the door. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Once, twice. She stood very still. Then she heard his voice. Lynn, it's me. She opened the door immediately, and then mentally scolded herself for doing it without checking the peephole. She gave him a fierce hug around his neck. Boundaries be damned. She needed this hug. Let him be her anchor. Kung wanted so bad to hug her back. She rarely gave real hugs like this. He wanted to throw the things in his hands on the ground and wrap his arms around her. Instead, he kissed her forehead several times. He didn't try to break the connection. They both needed this. After Lin released him, she pulled back to see he stood there holding 2 mangoes and what looked suspiciously like a pastry box. I figured, he said. If today is strange, sugar might help. She stared at the box. Are those croissants? Yes. Her eyes widened. You are officially my favorite person. That smile, soft, genuine, lit his chest on fire. They sat on her balcony, feet propped up, city noise humming below, and she told him, briefly, about her old job. Not details, not names, just enough. I used to evaluate people for the courts, she said. After something happened, my brain stopped cooperating. That doesn't sound like weakness, he said. She snorted. Tell that to my nervous system. He studied her. Have you spoken to anyone about it? Her humor snapped into place instantly. Oh, absolutely, she said. Me, in the mirror. Very productive. He smiled gently. A therapist. Lynn. Yes, I have. Even a few telemed sessions here, but there are 3 problems that make it difficult. Being a therapist for a therapist is a tough job. I already know to do everything she'll want me to do. The second thing is, she wants to unpack the trauma, which calls for a vivid examination to process it out. She made a face. I'm not opposed, I'm just resistant. The biggest and most important thing is, I require clearance to return to work. Even though I retired voluntarily, my struggle to maintain objectivity was not a secret. So, seeing a therapist might help get clearance, but yeah, let me dwell on that. Honestly, I'm not sure I want to go back. She smiled at him, but he knew her well enough now to know that her smile didn't always mean she was happy. They sat in silence, the kind that didn't demand anything. Below them, a man paused on the sidewalk and looked up. Kung saw him. Lin did too, but neither said it out loud. Kung accepted something with terrifying clarity. He could not keep his past from coming for them much longer. Lin had learned the hard way that safe was a flexible word. People liked to say things were safe because it made them feel better. Courtrooms, group homes, office buildings with security badges and laminated policies. Safe was a promise written on paper. Reality, she knew, was more negotiable. She sat at her kitchen counter that morning, flexing her right hand slowly, deliberately. The scar caught the light, thick, pale, unmissable. She no longer tried to hide it. She'd lost strength, but not her will, just range of motion or grip tightly. She rotated her wrist again, wincing only slightly. I'm still faster than most men, she muttered, and smarter than all of them. That helped. Humor always did. Kung noticed her hand immediately, not the scar. He had seen that before, rather the way she tested it. Controlled, intentional. You're assessing something, he said as they walked. She smiled faintly. I do that. No, he replied. You're doing it professionally. She stopped. Looked at him. Really looked. Well, she said slowly. You're observant. I had to be. She resumed walking. I used to be very good at reading people. Used to be? She laughed softly. I still am. I just don't trust my conclusions anymore. That answer sat heavy between them. They reached the cafe, the same one where the European man had confronted her days earlier. She hesitated for half a second before returning to her royal stride. You don't get to take this from me, she told herself. She noticed things automatically. Too automatically. A man near the perimeter pretending to read but tracking reflections instead of text. Another positioned near the wall she almost tripped over. That had become her secret friend. No wall, no fine-ass Korean man to catch her, with the K-drama moment and all. Such a nice wall, another with no drinks on their tables. It was almost comical. That's interesting, her mind supplied. What's interesting? They are really bad at this clandestine thing. She whispered to him and they both giggled like it was an inside joke. Okay, she said brightly. If you're going to keep following me around, you should know I have opinions. About? Everything. He smiled, and he liked her opinions. He liked the way her mind worked, quick, sharp, amused by itself. He especially liked the way she refused to let fear dull her edges. Still, his awareness spiked. The same men were here. Again. Later, as they walked back toward her condo, Lynn felt it. That prickle. The one she hated because it had never been wrong. She slowed. So did Kung. You feel it too, she said quietly. Yes. She exhaled. Okay, don't panic. We're not panicking. She scanned without looking like she was scanning. Store windows, shadows, reflections. Her brain slid effortlessly into a mode she hadn't used in years. Who benefits? Who escalates? Who wants to be seen? Her pulse quickened. Not from fear, but recognition. Oh, she thought grimly, I still have it. And that realization, sharp, bittersweet, made her throat tighten. I need to tell you something, she said suddenly. Kung turned to her fully. I don't scare easily, she continued. I grew up in LA. I fought more than I should have. I learned early how to hit back. He listened without interrupting. But the last time I was attacked, she said, voice steady but thin, I couldn't fight. I wasn't allowed to. It was supposed to be safe. Her hand curled unconsciously. That broke something in me. Kung's stomach twisted. Not in anger. Something worse. Pain. She looked up at him, forcing a smile that didn't quite land. So if you were keeping secrets from me because you think I'm fragile? She stepped closer. You're wrong. He met her gaze. I was keeping secrets, he said carefully, because my world destroys people. She nodded once. Then we better be ready when it comes knocking. Because it will. They reached her building. This time she didn't go inside right away. She turned to him. You don't love my laughter because it's cute, she said. You love it because it means I'm still standing. His throat tightened. Yes, he said, exactly. Across the street, a car engine turned over, slow and deliberate. Lynn felt it again. That pull, that alignment of instinct and intellect. For the first time since she'd left her career, she didn't suppress it. She leaned closer to Kung and said quietly, Someone is about to make a mistake. Lynn did not panic. That was the thing people never understood about her. Panic didn't look like screaming or chaos. It looked like stillness. Her mind snapped into alignment the way it used to before matches, before shifts, before stepping onto a unit where half the patients could kill you with their bare hands. Her shoulders relaxed, breathing slowed, and her awareness widened. Depending on where she stood, a door behind her could be a liability or a resource. In this instance, it was a liability because she didn't know if the door was an escape route or a trap. So the door was treated like a liability. She shifted her weight subtly, angling her body so the car across the street stayed in her peripheral vision while she watched Kung's reflection in the building glass. That car's been idling too long, she said calmly. Kung glanced once, just once, and then nodded. Yes. She almost smiled. Good, she thought. He's not the type to dismiss instincts. They stood there like two people having an ordinary conversation. To anyone watching, nothing was wrong. To Lynn, everything was information. Driver still inside, engine warm, no phone, no smoking, hands not visible. That's not tourism. Her pulse quickened. Not with fear, but familiarity. God help her. She missed this part of herself. Kung watched her transform in real time. The humor didn't disappear, it sharpened. Her posture changed, her presence grounding instead of expansive. She didn't look fragile, she looked operational, and something in his chest twisted. So this is who she is when she's not running. Walk, he murmured. They moved together, smooth, unhurried. He placed himself half a step behind her, not shielding, not leading. Supporting, she noticed. He understands positioning, she thought. Good. They reached her door. The car rolled forward a few feet, then stopped. That did it. Lynn turned slowly. Her voice stayed light. You know, if this is the part where someone jumps out dramatically, I'd really prefer a warning. The car door opened. A man stepped out. Not the same one as before. Different build, different posture. But the intent? The same. Lynn's jaw tightened. Her hand flexed unconsciously, muscle memory firing despite the damage. She adjusted her stance automatically, compensating for the limitation the way she had learned to after surgery. Knees bent, centered, ready. Kung felt it then, fully, unmistakably. She was not someone to be hidden. She was someone who survived by engaging. Lynn, he said quietly, go inside. She didn't move. No, she replied evenly. Not until I know why he's here. The man smiled, thin, performative. Just wanted to say hello. Lynn laughed. It surprised everyone. Oh, she said, shaking her head, that's adorable. Because where I'm from, men who want to say hello don't do it from idling vehicles. The man's smile twitched. That micro expression, the irritation leaking through, lit up her mind like a flare. There you are, she thought. I see you. You should leave, Kung said, voice low, final. The man hesitated. Lynn leaned in slightly, her voice dropping just enough to cut. Here's the thing, she said. You're not the scariest man I've met, not even close, and you're standing too far from your door to get back in cleanly. Silence. The man's eyes flicked, once, to Kung. That told her everything. Messenger, not the threat. He got back into the car, drove away. Only then did Lynn exhale. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from restraint. She hated restraint. Inside her condo, she finally let herself sit. Her heart hammered now, delayed. Kung stood by the door, watching her carefully. You didn't tell me, he said quietly. She looked up at him. I didn't forget who I am, she replied. I just wasn't allowed to be her anymore. He nodded slowly. Private security, she added. Corrections. Hospital units. Criminally insane. I'm licensed to carry. That hit him harder than anything else she'd said. You're a fighter, he said. She smiled, sharp, unapologetic. Always have been. Then her smile faltered. And that's why what happened to me broke something. Not because I was attacked, but because I wasn't allowed to defend myself, and, she offered with emphasis, this white man hit me in my mouth. That pissed me off more than the chokeout. Her voice cracked. But she didn't cry. Not yet. Kung crossed the room then, not to dominate the space, but to anchor it. He stepped closer and wrapped his arms around her. Then he kissed her on the forehead. I tried to keep you out of this, he said. I won't be able to anymore. She looked up and met his gaze steadily. Good, she said, because I refuse to survive by hiding. Then, softer, with humor creeping back in. But just so we're clear, I'm still mad about my wrist. It impedes my ability to squabble up. Oomph, I still have a little Inglewood in my blood. Sorry about that. That made him laugh, a real laugh. And for the first time since his past began creeping toward them, Kung Da-sung understood something crucial. Lynn wasn't the liability. She was the variable no one had accounted for. The cafe was loud in that comfortable way. Cups clinking, steam hissing, someone laughing too hard at a joke that probably wasn't funny. Lynn liked places like this. Noise gave her something to lean against. She sat with her back to the wall, of course. Some habits weren't trauma. Some were just intelligence. Her Dodgers cap was pulled low, sunglasses still on even though she was indoors, iced coffee sweating onto the table. She'd already texted herself a note to remember to buy oat milk later. Her life had been reduced to reminders like that. Small, manageable, controllable. The phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Olajuwon. Her stomach tightened. Not fear, not panic, just attention. Her kids rarely called. They were all very independent. They mostly called when something was wrong, so seeing his name gave her just a little bit of anxiety. She answered easily, bright voice on reflex. Hey, son, what's up? You calling to tell me the Dodgers are going to get that three-peat this year? And where is my jersey, matter of fact? There was a pause. Too long. Mom. The cafe noise faded. Not disappeared, just slid backward like someone turning down a volume knob in her brain. Stomach pain, straightening in her chair. Okay, she said lightly. That didn't sound like sports trash talk. What's going on? Another pause. And suddenly she was no longer in the cafe. She was back in courtrooms, back in hospitals, back in places where silence meant something bad was about to land. Mom, he said again, slower this time. Careful, like he was handling glass. I didn't know how to tell you this. Her heart rate ticked up. Not racing, measured. Her stomach tightened just a bit more. She noticed it the way she always did. Physiological arousal without panic. You're still here. Man, if you don't just say it, she said. You're starting to make my nerves bad, Lynn said. She could only take so much before the dramatic pause got on her nerves. He exhaled hard. It's Samara. That did it. Something shifted behind her ribs. Geez, just say it, son. She cleared out the storage unit. Lynn blinked. She did what? Hoping that she didn't hear him right. She cleared out the storage unit. The one with my books? She asked, still joking because that was easier. Another silence, her fingers tightened around the cup. Mom. Her chest sank, slow and heavy. What do you mean, cleared out? She asked. The oldest voice cracked, not much, but enough. Enough to make her stomach hurt in that deep, helpless way. She threw everything away. The cafe came rushing back all at once, sound, light, heat. What do you mean everything? Lynn said, very softly now. The books, he said. All of them. The signed ones. The ones you've had since college. Her throat closed. She felt nauseous. The furniture, he continued. The leather set. The DVDs. The boxes marked keep. The photos. Mom. It's gone. Gone. Such a small word. She laughed. It startled him. Her vision blurred. She took off her sunglasses, pressed them into her palm like they might ground her. I don't understand, she whispered. Why would she do that? I think... He hesitated. I think she was angry. About you leaving. About Thailand. About everything. She said that you abandoned her again. There it was. The thing Lynn never said out loud. I didn't abandon her, Lynn said, and this time the laugh broke. I didn't. I'm still her mother. I needed to breathe. I know, Olajuwon said quickly. I know that. Okara knows that. We told her. It doesn't matter, Lynn interrupted gently. It mattered to her. That's enough. She stared at the table, at the ring of condensation from her glass. It felt stupid that something so small could undo her, but grief was like that. It waited for openings. Those books had been older than Samar herself. Some had been signed. Some had survived moves, marriages, death. They'd been witnesses. My stomach hurts. She didn't mean to say that out loud, but it was the truth. Olajuwon didn't respond. I didn't know how to tell you, he said. Why? Lynn asked quietly. She said that she wasn't about to be lugging all of that stuff around since you don't plan to come back. Lynn swallowed. Okay, I get it. Her way of punishing me for abandoning her? Again, she said. So she burned the bridge instead of walking across it? That was her daughter. A Taurus to the bone. Too much fire. Not enough pause. Like a bull in a room of fine china. Her wrist began to ache. Not the injury, but the memory. Loss stacked on loss. Things taken when you weren't allowed to fight back. She breathed in, counted. 1, 2, 3. Then she laughed again, softer this time. Well, she said, voice wobbling, I guess I finally downsized. He huffed. Mom! I'm serious, she said. Minimalism. Very trendy. You don't have to joke. I really do, she replied. Or I'll fall apart in public and I don't have time for that. She glanced up. That's when she noticed the man by the door, standing. not ordering. Watching reflections instead of faces. Her brain tagged it instantly, even through the grief. Her body stayed calm, her mind didn't. Son, she said, tone shifting just a hair, I love you. I love you too. I'm okay, she lied smoothly. I just need a minute. You sure? Yeah, she said. I've survived worse than a bad spring cleaning. She hung up, sat there, let the tears come. Quiet, controlled, the way she'd learned. She was leaking again, no sound, just rivers of tears. Then she wiped her face, slid her sunglasses back on, and stood. Whatever had followed her across the world, whatever had found her, it had arrived on a day when she was already bleeding. And that made her dangerous. For real. For real. A quiet, mad, and hurt lioness was always plotting. As a Leo, she would have warned this man if she was in the mood. Don't poke the lion. Lynn had always known that freedom came with a price. Thailand had been her bubble, her sanctuary, but instinct, her lifelong ally, had never left her. It sat quietly, watching, waiting for the first sound of movement. They appeared mid-morning on the following day while she was sitting in her favorite cafe, minding her business. She noticed him before he noticed her. A man moving too deliberately, watching reflections instead of faces. Behavioral baseline off, hands hidden, feet ready. She saw Kung crossing the street. His presence was a comfort, even when his eyes narrowed slightly. He saw the tension, but he trusted her to handle it, for now. Lynn rose, joking to the barista as she walked past, using humor as a fortress. If this is a dance, I don't know the steps, she muttered under her breath. And I'm not in the mood to learn. The man followed. He wasn't looking like a tourist, not even trying to blend in. A predator in plain sight. This made Lynn's brain begin to catalog everything. Doors, reflective surfaces, pedestrian traffic, shadow lengths. Vector closing, approach south to north. Intent predatory. She turned sharply down a side street. Kung followed silently, a massive shadow behind her. Unexpectedly, 5 men stepped from the alleys. 5. The predator and 4 of his friends caused her forensic mind to rapidly assess the situation for managing the threat. 3 on Kung and 2 on her. She cursed under her breath. Excellent. Perfectly coordinated. Of course, she muttered. It's never just one. Kung moved first. Massive, precise, calm. His 3 attackers underestimated him. He struck, twisted, blocked, and countered, a masterclass in close-quarters combat. The clash sounded like muted thunder against the narrow walls, but while Kung fought 3 men, the other 2, quiet, fast, and disciplined, grabbed her. Lynn fought instinctively, throwing elbows, twisting, kicking. It wasn't enough. The 2 aggressors had the leverage, and Lynn's injured hand made grappling harder than it had been in years. Damn it, she thought. She hated not being able to protect herself. Kung's eyes widened briefly as he noticed her disappear from the corner of the fight. One of his attackers had used the distraction expertly. His body tensed, his voice low and lethal. I'll get her back! The fight exploded into a blur of movement. Kung's fists, knees, elbows, and sheer force, taking down the 3 who were with him. He moved like a predator, calculating every angle using physics and precision. Each strike was measured, each attack blocked. His golden eyes burned with focus. But when the last of the 3 crumpled to the ground, Kung whirled around. Lynn wasn't there, panic, quiet but sharp, hit him. Not fear, not for himself, but for her. Lynn! His voice tore through the alley. Silence answered. The 2 men who had taken her were gone, disappearing down a narrow corridor. Kung cursed, lunged after them, but he knew. They had a head start. He stopped as he exited onto the street, scanning, heart steady but burning. The alley had smelled of sweat and dust and adrenaline. He had won the fight. Every man who'd come at him was lying still or groaning on the ground. But Lynn? She was gone. Kung's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone with one hand, his finger pressed one number, deliberately. Dialing. Waiting. Send everyone by the jet, Thailand, 6 hours, bring everything, bring my people, he said in Korean. His voice clipped, low, impossible to ignore. By the tone of his commands, there was no debate, no hesitation. The man on the other end responded immediately, acknowledging every word with precision. Kung ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. The kidnappers thought he would come alone, thought he would be cautious, thought he'd negotiate. They had no idea. In less than 6 hours, Kung's men would arrive by private jet. They were coming for what was his, and they would make the kidnappers pay for daring to put their hands on someone under his protection. Someone he loved. He lost his baby girl. Kung vowed that he would never let anyone take what he loved again. They didn't call him right away. It was a mistake by letting 6 hours pass. 6 hours of silence. No proof of life and no ransom demand. There was no message, just absence. Kung sat in his hotel room, phone in his hand, unmoving. He had already received the call. The private jet was already on the ground. His men were already moving across Pattaya, Thailand like ghosts. But none of that quieted the pressure in his chest. He had faced bullets, betrayals, and wars. But this was worse. Not knowing if she was alive, if she was in pain, or if he was already too late. That uncertainty was exactly what they wanted. They thought they were breaking him, and that his desperation would make him an easy target. They were only buying time for their own destruction. Inside the warehouse, Lynn was still alive, but her hands were tied behind her chair now and her ankles secured to the legs of the chair, her mouth covered with a cloth after a joke earned her silence. The operative who tied it hadn't smiled. She noted that. He's disciplined and not emotional. Probably ex-military, follows orders, but he's not leadership material. Her mind sharpened. They haven't hurt me yet. That tells me everything. They needed her intact. Her life or death impacted Kung's response. If they kill me, they know that Kung will try to eliminate them. Leverage only works if it's alive. She focused on breathing slowly, keeping her body calm. Panic wasted oxygen, and fear was a waste of time. They want Kung. Kung is leverage to reach his son. They needed both of them alive for the time being, which means I'm safer than they think, and they're dumber than they realize. So she waited, patiently, quietly, still, plotting. 6 hours later, the call finally comes. Kung's phone rang with a video call from Lynn's phone that he answered instantly. Lynn's face appeared on screen. She had a bruised cheek, mouth covered, eyes sharp, very much alive. His chest loosened slightly. Not relief, but oxygen was returning. The lieutenant leaned into frame. "You have 1 hour," the man said calmly. "Come alone, or she'll be the first to go." Lynn almost rolled her eyes. Lie, and a bad one at that. If they were serious, they would have sent proof already. A threat without evidence was just theater. They still needed her, and they still needed Kung. She held Kung's gaze through the screen and gave the smallest nod. "I'm alive. Think. Don't panic." Kung read it instantly. He didn't beg, didn't threaten or negotiate. "I will come," he said evenly. The lieutenant smiled. Ego. There it was. They ended the call. They knew he would find them because he tracked her location by her phone. They thought they were in control. They had no idea the board had already flipped. While they waited in Thailand, Kung's son was already moving in their world back in Seoul. Orders were simple. Total dismantling. Every asset, every safe house, every account. Every lieutenant tied to the Minyong faction that dared touch Kung's family. And yes, Lin was family. By dawn, the rival faction's leadership structure will have collapsed. By noon, their funding lines were cut. By evening, their streets belonged to someone else. The message was clear. Touch Kung, touch Lin, face extinction. Back at the warehouse, the trap was closing. Lin sensed it before it happened. The air changed. Men grew tense. Phones buzzed quietly. Someone cursed in Korean. Good. That meant pressure from the other side of the world had arrived. They're losing control back home, which means they'll rush, which means mistakes. She straightened slightly in her chair. Kung arrived exactly when he said he would. Alone. At least, that's what they thought. The lieutenant stepped forward to meet him. That's when the lights went out. Not darkness, precision darkness. Generators cut. Communications jammed. Doors breached silently. Kung's men moved. Inside the warehouse, Lin heard the chaos begin. Gunfire, shouting, footsteps. She leaned and tilted her chair on its side, working slack into the rope around her wrists. Timing. Everything. The lieutenant drew his weapon. Too slow. Kung appeared in front of him like something pulled from shadow. He didn't speak. He moved. The first man dropped. The second tried to run. Didn't make it. Kung crossed the room in seconds, cutting Lin free with controlled urgency. Her mouth covering came off. She inhaled sharply. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. She stood. Steady. Alive. You okay? He asked. She nodded once. Yeah, I wasn't worried at all. His lips twitched. Outside, the last of the opposition fell. No survivors that could speak. No stories that could be told. Hours later, they stood near the ocean, watching the sunrise as it painted the water gold. He smiled down at her as he wrapped a thin shawl around her shoulders. He held her close as she leaned into him. You know what's funny? She said quietly. You knew how they moved, and I knew how they thought, but I'd prefer never to use those skills again. Pleased that this crisis was completely addressed, they sat together on her balcony making travel plans, and within 7 days they were in the air, flying on a private jet at that. Fancy, ain't you? Lin smiled up at Kung with a cute smirk and winked her eye. They traveled all over the world, and Lin collected passport stamps like trophies. Paris, Rome, Morocco, Brazil. She laughed loudly and loved boldly. Still had panic flares sometimes and carried scars, but now she carried joy with her all of the time. Kung stayed retired, for real this time. The only war he was participating in was trying to keep Lin from packing too much stuff. Thank you for staying with us for the story of Lin and Kung. We hope you enjoyed her story. Please like and subscribe for more stories of strong sisters. Have a great day.